So, what is going on, everybody? My name is James Cademan, and I have Authentic Business Adventures. This was an interesting interview that I did with Araceli because of just the nature that we're in with the race, we'll call it protests going on, and people are already being on edge with the COVID thing and all that jazz. And hopefully we are moving along with our lives and getting stuff, I don't know, hopefully that we learn something here. I wanted to just give a comment here because this is the first interview that we had that I let go long, and we split it up into two parts because of that. Because it was interesting talking with Araceli and just the perspective that she's coming from and the perspective that I'm coming from. As two people that essentially have two different perspectives on what the problem is overall with society, or some of the problems, I guess. We didn't solve everything. But at any rate, I feel like we're both going after the same thing. We essentially want everybody to get along. We want everybody to have opportunity. And we want everyone as a group to just grow and become better people. How we do that, or what we feel needs to be done in order for that to happen, as you'll see in the interview, or as you'll hear in the interview, are clearly different. But it's just what happens with perspective, right? No one has our exact experience and education, knowledge, and all that jazz, so therefore it is unlikely that anyone's going to have our exact opinion. So I appreciate you checking out this, we'll call it half of the interview with Araceli. It was good times, and I wish Araceli the best. She's got a lot going on. She's got a very interesting podcast. She's got a decent marketing company. She's good people, right? And just like every other good person that you know, friends, relatives, all that jazz, you don't necessarily have to agree with them in order to have a conversation with them and help understand their perspective. So I did want to preface this a little bit by saying I have a business. I've been doing this podcast for, I don't know, a couple of years. I think we're on podcast somewhere around 120, a lot. And this is such an interesting one. And it was fun, but it was also a little bit nerve-wracking. I imagine for Araceli, the guest, as well, because she was probably thinking, oh my gosh, James, you are crazy. And on the other hand, there are times, well, you know, we all think that everybody else is crazy at one time or another. So I appreciate you listening. If I can be of any assistance, by all means, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is james@drawincustomers.com. My phone number is 608-210-2221. This, of course, isn't live, but I am. So feel free to shoot me an email, shoot me a phone call, whatever you got, and I'd be happy to carry on the conversation. It's an interesting time for everyone involved, everyone in I imagine, the whole world. So hopefully this plays out for the better, and overall the world is a better place, whatever that may mean for you and myself. All in all, I just want us to have fun doing business, right? I don't think that's too much to ask. Universally. So enjoy. This is part 2 of Authentic Business Adventures. Enjoy. You have found Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphs and successes of business owners across the land. This week, we are doing part 2 of the interview that I had with Araceli Esparza, founder and owner of Midwest Mujer, an outreach marketing company. Now, the interesting thing about this, as you will see, is that it's part 2. This is the first time we've did a 2-part interview. So if you'd like to check out part 1, you can find that either at drawincustomers.com and just click the podcast link. Otherwise, you can also go to Sun Prairie Media Center, to their website, or at the Sun Prairie Media Center app. So we got all kinds of choices for you to check out part 1. But here is part 2. I want to ask you a question that as I'm looking in my office, I get a picture of my kid, 6-year-old kid.
Nice.
And we have a friend that has a store on State Street that was having a bad, we'll call it, few months. All right. Stuff is stacking up, all that jazz. And we're trying
Same
to
here.
explain
I
to
have
him.
one of my friends too. She owns a store and we did a podcast just yesterday. No, 2 days ago with her. I did a podcast. But anyways, go ahead.
We were trying to explain to him what was going on. Explaining the whole virus thing was challenging enough. And then we had to explain the whole protest and riots and all that kind of stuff. And he kept asking why, just like any kid would. And when he was asking why, I was trying to do my best to answer him. And I thought, what if this kid was never taught that there were different races, for example, right? Because race is something that it's a description that people use to just point out stuff. But because we have that description, we then invented racism, right? So what if this kid was never taught that? This kid, and then of course you'd have to do that universally, right? What if we just never mentioned the word race again, and we never distinguished between black, white, red, anything, right? What if we just never, there was a point in time when just moving forward, we never discussed it again. After a few generations, we can assume then that racism would be gone. Not to say that every problem would be gone, but we wouldn't even know, right? We wouldn't have a way to define it. Those words wouldn't exist. So I just want to get your take on that.
I mean, okay, well, one, I would say that, have you gotten plugged in with Sesame Street, with the Elmo show? Because they have Sesame Street came out with a whole series talking about the riot for kids.
He's
I don't know if you did.
Crowd, but
no,
sure. I guess
he's
I'm
6
not
years
aware
old.
of that.
He knows Elmo. Okay. Elmo is talking with his dad about the protests, and there's like a really nice show that they just came out with on the street. No, he's 6 years old. He'll watch Elmo, and it's a kind of a little mature Elmo a little bit because of the nature of like what they're talking about. Sure. So that's one resource that I would have for you and your kids, because I think I watched it myself and I approve of it. It's very cool.
But my point is, they talk about race there, right?
They do. And then secondly, what I would say to you is regarding your idea or the hypothesis is that, I mean, it's a great hypothesis, I guess. I don't know what I mean, it's something when people say they don't see your race when you meet them. Oh, I didn't see you. I don't see you for being Mexican, or I don't see you as that, or that's insulting, and I think that... You
have to help me with that, though, because how is that insulting?
Because it's all over me. I'm sorry, James. Like, it's all over me. I mean, how could you not see me? You know that I'm a female, right? That you won't ignore. But you can't ignore the fact that I'm Mexican. Why would you want to? Because then you're erasing who I am and how I'm presenting. And you're also
you didn't know that I was Norwegian, though, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Dutch or anything? Or, like,
I knew you were white. I knew you were white. I'm not dumb.
Right. I see, like, white broad.
I'm pretty sure you're beard, because I could tell. It's just the same thing. Why would you ignore that about a person? Because that's their unique matter. Well, because it does. It matters to a flower. Well, yeah, I know that, but it matters to a flower that it's purple, right? And why wouldn't it matter to us?
I cannot say that it matters to a flower. I've never talked about
you don't. Well, I have seen what they say. They come out a certain way. They don't come out all looking the same either. It must mean something to them to be a certain color. So it must mean something to us.
Does it have to? You say the word must.
Yeah. It must mean something to us. Not all the time. I don't know. That's a big question.
If you make it a race thing, it's going to be a race thing. Then you'll have a perpetual fight.
Well, it's not a race thing. I mean, it's our identity. And our identity can take on a lot of different forms, right? It's not just race.
From my view, I see woman, entrepreneur. I didn't
being a Latina has everything to do with my abilities of being an entrepreneur. Of course it does.
I could go down the psychological road of people and their identities, right?
Well, I think it's really important to being an entrepreneur had a lot to do with being Mexican, of course. I don't think if I was, it might have been for you as well, though. Maybe being white has a lot to do with being an entrepreneur for you.
Not even a little bit.
Really? I doubt that, James.
I did not say I am white, therefore I will start a business.
No, but it was easy for you to do it.
I have a crappy job and I know how to drive, so I will start.
Right.
But that was
because
years ago.
You are white, it was easier for you to do it, though. Does that make sense?
And
I think that's what a lot of people...
That's what I'm told, but if that was easy, then you'll have to show me what's hard.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, stay with that one, James. Stay with that one. stay with that one, and keep asking for that, because I think it will manifest itself. It will definitely
I don't want to
manifest
ask
itself,
for
and
anything
that's
more
through.
difficult. I've had enough challenges.
Right? It will no, but I mean, like, you can form like friendships and unity with folks of color, marginalized communities, so that they can give you that perspective honestly and authentically,
So
and so that you will
you
see
know
how
that
hard it is.
I teach classes over at WIBIC, which is geared towards women and minorities. I have
Right.
the only way that I look at those people is, are you going to start a business or are you not? And the only reason
Right.
that you wouldn't is if you don't have the drive. So I see you as either driven or not driven. And if you're not driven, is it possible to make you driven, or are you just complacent or playing the victim or whatever, where you essentially are telling yourself that you can't? I don't care about color. I don't care about background. I don't care what you eat for breakfast. I don't care about any of that. Are you driven enough to start
Well,
your own business or not?
and dude, I think that's you thinking that, but the banks don't think that way about them. The banks don't.
Well,
Banks are not going to care. The banks are going to definitely care, and they might not lend to them because they're a minority business. They're going to have hurdles to face, and I get it. It's cool not to. It's cool sometimes as a person of color. It might be a little bit relieving to be in a space where your where your identity is kind of like checked at the door, and you're all here for a mission. I guess that can be helpful at times.
yes.
But it's also unhelpful to not acknowledge the challenges as a business owner of color when you're going in for either bids or work. I mean, which is why we have affirmative action bids, and that's why the state allows for that, because it's like really difficult to have that there. And that's just like white supremacy and capitalism that's ingrained in all of us, and making sure that people are put in certain places. So I don't know if you've ever seen that one clip where there's a guy who, like, he's like some football guy or something. He's like a coach, and he's like telling you, okay, if something like this happened to you, take 2 steps back. If something like this happened to you, take 2 steps back. If this happened to you, take 2 steps forward. And so at the end of it, you see like a bunch of white kids like way in front of the black kids, and the black kids are way at the beginning of the line, and then they're asked to race. That's exactly what happens with business of color, where we're all assuming they're going to start at the same place, but we don't. We absolutely don't, because we don't have the agencies from the first step. But I get what you're saying. I mean, it's great. It's really influential, and it's fun to get into that movement moment, right? And to like inspire people, because heaven's sakes, they've already been crushed 100 times before they got to your classroom, that they could even make it, right? So I think it's a nice landing spot. I'm not criticizing your technique, but I'm just saying that it's also very cathartic and useful sometimes to have that empathy, that really deep empathy and sympathy of like the challenges that it took you to do it, and that they were, some of those, not because of your choice, but just because of your color of your skin. And that's a hard road. It's a really hard road. And just to repeat again for your listeners, hey, watch 13 on Netflix. Watch John Leguizamo's Latin History for Morons. Enjoy. Make learning fun. It doesn't always have to be grimy. It doesn't also have to be super like shameful. Read White Fragility by D'Angelo, I think is her last name. It's a really nice book about white fragility and what happens, because apparently white people are fragile, and then when they're fragile, they get angry.
Everybody's a delicate butterfly deep down inside, right?
I guess they are. I'm like, not only do they want to be the top of the king of the hill, but they also are sad about it. I have no idea.
Go back as far back in time as you're willing to go, and you will find a version of an oppressed person. Right? As far back as you want to go, eventually everyone at one time or another has been oppressed.
Oh, absolutely.
So to me, it's just this victim mentality that I'm just like, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Stop the victim mentality.
You're absolutely right. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but that's manifested and perpetuated through mass media, through education, through systems of agencies and resources. They're perpetuated through and through. It's not just the person that's impacted. It is the people who are. It is the people who are supporting the systems that are impactful.
That's fair. You could definitely argue that it's a societal issue. Complete agreement with that. There are a
Yeah.
ton of societal issues that the more that we point them out and say this is why they're an issue, I don't feel that the reasons that we are saying they're an issue is accurate. I feel like the things that we're pointing out are arguably making it worse.
It could be. You're right. I mean, it could be, but at the same time, it needs to be all purged and put out, and then maybe you can, kind of like, burning the forest. You burn it down, and maybe it will grow back better. It'll grow back better.
That sounds like you're talking about genocide. I hope not, but.
Oh no, God no! I'm just talking about a forest. I'm talking about the society structures of like.
Where does the analogy end?
I said a forest. The forest gets burned down, and sometimes it grows back.
Oh,
it grows back better.
Every time it grows back. Yeah.
It grows back. And so I think by calling it out, it is kind of like cutting down those trees and like maybe letting something new come about.
Oh, I don't think so. No. Then maybe
you don't think the call out part? You don't think the call out part is good at all to like point it out, or you're saying, because you were saying that the pointing it out makes it worse.
Correct.
And what I'm going to say is that maybe pointing it out might help it later.
My perspective is that we are scratching mosquito bites. Yeah. Eventually that mosquito bite would go away unless you keep scratching it. Now we're building up scars. I feel that's just because I feel like everybody, and I mean universally everybody, has opportunity. Now you could argue that a person does not have as much opportunity as another person based on where they're born, the financial status of where they're born, how they were raised, education, insert thing that will reduce the perceived opportunity here, right? But you could argue that there are many people, arguably most people, that are successful that had some cross to bear, maybe multiple crosses to bear. And you would have never guessed that they would have ended up where they are. So I feel like a lot of people feel like it's easier to just walk around and complain than it is to actually get off their butt and change. Whatever that change may be.
Right. And sometimes that they're sitting on their butt because somebody pushed them on there too.
Get up.
Somebody pushed them there, and that's hard. And it's
You're
hard
cry
because
about
some
it,
people
you just gotta get up.
And that's why I think people do appreciate your voice in all of this, is that you add this like undeniable, energetic way of like getting up. And so keep telling people to get up, but also realize that it's really hard to get up when you've been pushed down so long and for so hard time. And that's sometimes that
it would be easy though.
No, you're right. Nobody did.
When you're born, life is going to be this cakewalk.
Nobody did.
We
but
grow
some
based
people,
on
it
the
look like
problems, right?
There's some people it look like they had it a little bit harder than others, that's and based on
absolutely.
things that were
absolutely.
really beyond control. Huh?
Just because you have it more difficult than the person next to you doesn't mean that you cannot accomplish anything. It just means that it may be harder.
Oh, no. It may be harder, it's going to be harder, but it shouldn't always be harder. And some of those injustices have left into that, and I think that's where we start. That's when I think your enthusiasm and talk is great for business owners, and so for business owners of color, perhaps we could take something from that and apply it. But I think that when we're talking about movements and so forth, other people might come back and be like, a whole different story, I think that enthusiasm is great when you're talking about starting up a business and coming into it like with full force and so forth. But without that proper analysis grounded in racial justice, it can also be a little bit harmful to folks that are maybe just starting out too. You got to kind of you got to be careful with that. I think it's good. I think most of the time it's great. I mean, especially if you're dealing with somebody that went to WIBIC, the folks that have really, that have done their research at the very least and gone into this. There are people who start without even doing that type of research, and they just start the business. And it might not be good for them to encounter that type of energy. And when they do, sometimes it's like a scam, right? It's like, you're going to become a business owner. Just give us $2,000 and we'll help you, It's like, yeah.
Well, there's stuff like that. I'm not
mean?
really charging people. I'm just telling them to get off their butts. I'll do that all day long free of charge. Get off my butt. I don't care what color you are. I don't care anything about that.
Well, and if you're telling people to get off their butt, I hope you're giving them the hand to also pull them up, because that's what it takes too. It's not just telling people what to do. It's also pulling them. It's also giving them a hand. And it's not a hand out. It's really a step up.
No, all the people have to do, I say you cannot be afraid to ask for help. As soon as you feel like you are, whether it's shy or right, that you won't ask for help, there's tons of help available. As soon as you don't ask for help, and then you say, oh, I couldn't because X, Y, Z, like, no, you can, you should, you just have to take some steps in order to make that happen. People love playing the victim. They love it.
Yeah.
They're happy to, because that's easier to, it's so much easier to play the victim than it is to be the victor. Victimhood is easy. It's like getting fat, right?
Victimhood, and I want to be careful that how much we've been using the word victims and so forth, and to understand that that's a phase and that's part of like a serious injustice that might have happened to them. And people are all very different how they handle that. So I don't want to victimize victimhood here or weaponize victimhood here either in this conversation, because it's really, I've been a victim myself of both sexual assault and domestic violence, so it's really difficult for some of us who are in the stage of victimhood to hear that, because it's like people might be like, if you only knew, you know, that type of thing. So I think we should be careful. Everybody's been a victim of
something at some time though, right?
We just got to be careful how we say it too, because maybe it might be it could be chemical imbalance. It could be something above and beyond just like.
As soon as you use that as an excuse for not accomplishing something or making your life or the world a better place, you have weaponized that victimhood. You've lost. You make the world worse.
As an excuse. I mean, I don't know. I think it's, again, I'm not like the one to. That's not really my my expertise. But from the learning I've done from the agencies that I've worked with, that's all I was just saying. Just being cautionary how much we use that in this conversation. And yeah, just being cautionary how much that's used in that conversation, because I can't.
So, hold on a second. Are you telling me that I may, just to be clear, you're telling me that I may offend someone by telling them not to use their victimhood as an excuse not to accomplish something? Whatever that something is. That something is up to them.
I am not the one. I was asked to come on this talk show to talk about my business story.
Sure.
I am not justified about victimhood, except for as a prior survivor myself. I'm cautionary when I utilize those words so loosely, right, without the right context.
The word victim.
Yeah, without the real context of what that victim really means. A victim to me is a woman sprawled against the floor with a knife at her neck. Were you going to tell her to get up so that the knife can cut her? I mean, that's victimhood. That's not, I mean, I get what you're trying to say. You're like, oh, don't be everyone's a victim. I mean, maybe what you should say is maybe everybody's a whiner. We all quite whine, right? Maybe that's what you should say more instead of victimhood, because we're all whiners, you know, white people included, biggest whiners and complainers about everything, nitpicking as heck. But you know what? Who can't be a whiner? Or maybe some of their business of color. They have to bootstrap it. They can't whine them on. They got to, you know, grind it. Nobody's paying them. They're already the game for 50 cents to the dollar that you got, that their white friends got. So I mean, there's already like tons of reasons to make it so that you won't make it. And just keeping that in perspective, you know, I always talked about business. I wasn't here to talk about victimhood, except for that I am one, and I know that I mean, sometimes it was really difficult to get out of bed. It was really difficult to wake up some days. Some days you just want to die, and nobody's going to help you get out of that except for yourself. But for somebody to tell you, like, don't make an excuse, it's like, you're kind of like, blame victim, blaming them for something that they didn't even like ask for to do, but these are the consequences,
Well, it's kind of,
and they might not be in this, and then, especially when you're in victim stage. There's stages to victimhood, right?
Sure.
There's like the first stage is denial and the anger that comes with it, and then it's like the depression. And if you tell them that in that level, what you just said to me, your reaction is going to be defensiveness, anger, and like seriously, you might get hurt. You want to catch people at a certain time, and then, you grow into becoming a survivor and maybe even a leader and an advocate for the very victimization that happened to you. There's phases to that, and I'm just being cautious about who your audience is and what phase it is, what phase they could be listening to us in. Because if they're in any of the other stages that they want to hear that, it could just you could trigger somebody, and you
I
don't want
often
that,
tell
right?
people
You don't want to get a bad email. Another thing that my business helps with.
I am totally fine being the jerk, telling somebody something that they need to hear that maybe somebody else doesn't have the stones to tell them. They can hate me all day long, but in the end, they're going to hear that, and at some point, they're going to flip a switch. I'm going to ask them a question like,
if they don't,
how long would you like to play the victim, and how much will that help you? Eventually, they're going to say, you know what? It's not helping me. Why don't I do something about it? Or why don't I just ignore that thing that happened? Or just forget about it. It was in the past. It's meaningless, or it made you stronger because you have experience now. You have an awareness, right? You can help other people to avoid situations like that or whatever, right? Just as easily as I could say I was a victim because, my parents are on welfare or something like that. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and as soon as people realize that and really practice that, otherwise there's no one that's going to be like, oh, I played the victim for 10 years and it really helps me out. And if I have to be the jerk,
putting yourself up from your own bootstraps, if we only had all the bootstraps that were all the same length would be cool, but not all the time. Right?
Those are excuses, though.
I mean, that's not an excuse. I didn't make my bootstrap a certain length. It was that sometimes those things get cut off not by me, but by those systems that we were talking about earlier.
So I have to apologize because I'm not aware of all that goes on with a lot of these systems, right?
Exactly.
So, no, I don't know that anyone necessarily is exclusively. That'd be like knowing all of the tax code. You can't. No one person can. So if we believe that it exists before we actually engage in it, then that will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. A bank just wants to know that they're going to get paid back, so they're going to look at certain things, right?
We're talking about, at least for me, we're talking about business and so forth and how that intersects, and I think it's a great start of how intersectionality can intersect with businesses and with how startups are done. It's a really great conversation. I was part of a podcast-a-thon over the weekend, and it's on Facebook. And the last half hour, I had these really great women from Milwaukee, these really amazing Black women from Milwaukee, talking about the very same thing, about how they benefit from capitalism, even though they don't feel like capitalism, right? They understand that one day capitalism needs to maybe change so that communities of color can have real equity and real equality, so that hypothesis that you were talking about can come true. Some of the root problems might be just capitalism, and they went into it really deep. So I encourage your listeners to look up the Wisconsin Podcast Association. They were on live for 2 days raising funds for folks in the state of Wisconsin for food and stuff. So that's another great resource too. And I think I caught the last one on Saturday night, but I know it went Saturday and Sunday. So yeah, this is a great conversation on that intersectionality. I don't necessarily believe I'm the best speaker about that, but that I know enough to scratch the. I know enough to get you interested. So again, I hope that folks look for those resources. Like Fragility by Margaret D'Angelo. There's so many resources out there, regarding racial justice and other things. Yeah.
So the capitalism thing, that's a whole can of worms, but
that really is. But it gets right into.
Well, let me ask you.
It gets right into that. But yes, I don't know if I can speak more about that, except for that it was part of a conversation that people are having, and and that it's been put out there. It's being put out there by many different people, and so I thought it was really neat though that this weekend there was many different voices through
Sure.
podcasts, and a lot of them
So
talked about different things.
From my perspective, there's things to love about capitalism, things not to love. The thing that I do love is that there's opportunity for everyone. Now, you could argue maybe that opportunity is not equal based on whatever you want to look at. And I would argue it's going to be a challenge, but there are certainly other places in the world that you could be born into where you do not have that opportunity because capitalism isn't there. You don't have that. You can't just go out and start a business. Where in the U.S., we can pretty much just go out and start a business.
There are a lot of places you can do that, actually. I think there's more places in the world that you can do that than you can't. I think that's also a narrative from the United States to act as if they're really
sure.
Great.
But there's a lot of that's a reason that a lot of people want to come here, right? Is the opportunity.
Yeah, maybe not anymore. I mean, the border's closed because of COVID and stuff like that. So.
Well, just because they close
and
the
then
border,
with
they don't want to come here.
Nah, I don't know if they want to come here anymore. I mean, look at who our president is. I mean, they really another thing to for people to go and get resources though. It's called everydayfeminism.com, and that's a nice online magazine. Talks about all kinds of these issues that we've been talking about: race, religion, sex, love, body, disability, trans, and privilege. And so there's all these tabs. You can talk right about white privilege is like right there, front and center right now. And so they're talking in real time about what's happening nationwide. And as far as like nonprofits, and if you have nonprofits that are listening to your podcast, nonprofit leaders, there's an article from buildingmovement.org, and it's called Race to Lead Nonprofit Racial Leadership Gap. The nice PDM, and it talks about what can leaders do in the nonprofit sector to diversity and inclusion after their agency. So with all of those research, I really hope that some of your listeners will enjoy some learning about all of this stuff. Lots of things to dive into. I gotta keep going too.
Sure.
But,
I kept you a little late here. It's all
you
good.
did. It's all good. Exactly. No, it's great. It's great.
Do you have a couple minutes just to talk about your business? We got Wisconsin Mujer. We have, I know you have more than that going on.
Well, Midwest Mujeres is the podcast. And the podcast is we just got some grants from the city. We're going to do some artist talkbacks and interviews with Latino artists around Dane County. And that's kind of the latest. That's what's going on. We're doing on Facebook. We're doing a talk back with Latino folks. Really, what we're also trying to do is not only are we working with with EDs of nonprofits, but we also just want to start grassroots people. Get people's voices out there. Folks that don't think they might be leaders, but they have a great opinion about what's happening right now, and what's the Latino take on the anti-Blackness that happens and is perpetuated in our community, in our Latino community in particular, and what we can do to be better allies, basically, and how to show up for Black Lives Matter in our discourses and our conversations and our family and everything like that. You were about your friend, downtown business owner. I too had a friend that was a downtown business owner called Sophia's Spot on Langdon. She got completely raided, and we had a great conversation that was part of that podcast-a-thon over the weekend. I'm going to do another live with her on Thursday. And so if folks want to listen to that, it'll be coming out of my own Facebook platform, which is probably like the worst I could do. But honestly, because people follow me more as an influencer and not so much my company, that's like secondary. First, they find out who I am very easily, but like to find as an influencer, but they don't find out like that I actually have my own company. I don't just like do the I'm not agented or something like that. It's just me. I'm a micro influencer in this community. But you can look me up on some other platforms that are like Wisconsin Public Radio. I've been interviewed there several times, Smith, and other places like that. So you can find those spots. Wisconsin Mujer, MUJER. That means Wisconsin woman. .com, and you can catch us there on our website as well, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. And yeah, we're here to, encourage diversity, highlight the diversity of our state, and keep on rocking this role that we got going on here, and hopefully we can at least be known as not the first worst place in the world to live in if you're a person of color, and really engage our state in a way that is going to attract more people of color to come here, to live here, to stay here, we talk about the drain. What ends up happening is that so many of us end up leaving. I did. I've left many of times on and off over the years.
It might be winter.
No, it was never winter. Actually, I went colder. I went to Minnesota.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, my undergrad. Yeah, I lived there for 7 years. Yeah.
Oh, you're crazy.
I lived in Minneapolis, and actually, where the shooting happened with George Floyd, I lived seriously 5 blocks away from that shooting. I had lived. Yeah, I know that neighborhood very well. I know South Minneapolis very well. I lived on 33rd and Nicollet, so 38, and 5 blocks away and 2 blocks over. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I knew that neighborhood quite well.
I think about moving.
Yeah.
It's usually in the
winter.
Are you?
No,
I moved for
different reasons.
Okay, everybody's got their reasons, right? My wife is pretty happy here, so she's got family in Minnesota, not too far from the cities, so. She said we can move closer there. I said no. So this is as far south as she's willing to go. So this is where we are.
Oh, nice.
As usual, she won. Or continues to win.
Oh, because you would rather go somewhere south?
I would rather go somewhere warmer. I don't know where. Because there's a lot of criteria, right? I want to be able to afford to live at the place. So yeah, I have criteria, and I don't know that the little unicorn of a spot that I'm looking for actually exists. And because she's not really interested in moving, I haven't done any research to see that it exists. So, So here we are. So, but I want to ask you quick about the podcast. Is that a full-time thing?
No, we put out 12 issues. We put out 12 sessions. Again, and we're really selective. It just depends, I'm sometimes on the roll with it. I felt like it was something I wanted and needed in my journey. And I'm working on my memoir right now as we speak with someone else. It was really cool. And hopefully it'll come out really, I don't know, maybe come out in the next 12 months is what my hope is. Working on that. And then, just doing it well, I got a couple workshops coming up too. I'm working with this agency called, it's in Milwaukee actually, and so hooked up with them, and then doing some workshops with them and stuff. Yeah, it's called The Retreat. Yeah, The Retreat. It's called in Milwaukee, and so we're doing some work with them, and just getting out there, there's just lots of moving parts, as a consultant, I do lots of different sessions, and to other business owners, other Latina owners. We're starting off with a teach-in series that's going to happen very soon. I'm working in collaboration with another agency, kind of like a work skills agency. And so we're developing a digital marketing class series. Going to compose of 4 or 5 series, and basically Facebook, Instagram, and how to do it without breaking yourself type of thing. So we're going to be doing it too and meeting with them, and it should be cool. It should be really cool. I'm really excited to develop this new iteration of my company. I think the podcast was definitely where I needed to start, and interviewing and sharpening those speaking skills. And now we're kind of executing a second layer of that and building from that. but the work is still being done, even during COVID and so forth. We were still engaging in our community on a daily basis. We were giving people videos of how to apply to those applications online, both in English and in Spanish. And so this was all just our volunteer work, just giving to help people, to help people to get a step up. And I'm very grateful for my sponsors and my donors who support me through crowdfunding. I had a couple GoFundMe pages go through, and that was really nice to get that community support to help my work going. So I'm really excited that people in my community, statewide, nationally, choose to support the work that we're doing.
So that's very cool. That's super cool. So it sounds like a lot of stuff you do is volunteer. What are you doing to bring in money? Like you're getting paid from somewhere, but it's not through the podcast. You have a different business that's bringing in money, right? Is that the marketing one?
Right. So that's
okay.
Wisconsin Mujeres is the marketing, and yes. And then I do crowdfunding to help with Midwest Mujeres podcast. So, and that was funded completely by people. I mean, the first 12 episodes were completely done by crowdfunding through Kiva. So I crowdfunded through Kiva, and I did my own GoFundMe. That's what I was trying to say. I'm really thankful about sponsors and my donors, because they powered the podcast to go for 12 episodes.
Sure.
And from what I was hearing was that they didn't want the regular folks. They wanted people they haven't heard before from. That's who they wanted to hear from, regular people with no titles except for like their job, maybe, and not those type of folks either that are like job title folks either. No, they just wanted regular people from, talking about their Latino experience, and that's what we did. And so we were really successful in that. We're going to start that up again with artists now. We got a couple grant funding through the state of Wisconsin. Like I said, I'm working with other agencies as far as like implementing a series and classes, and so that's kind of the work I do, and that's how it's going to help pay. Like they were going to pay me too for it, and so yeah,
sure,
yeah.
All this time, who knew you could get paid to do a podcast? I should look into that.
Oh well, yeah. MG&E sponsored us as well.
Nice. I never reached out to them. So.
We had them speaking at my podcast, and we talked about like inequities and like outreach that they do for like economic inequities that we find in our community. Because you're right, everyone has to pay for their MG&E bill, but how? They don't have the money, so MG&E helps people to pay for their bill, and they're talking about all the ways that they do that. And the solar power stuff, and they talked about like all of these like programs, like you can qualify for low income for like home heating and weatherizing, and there are programs like that, and like solar power, and it was really nice. It was a really nice engagement that we had with them. Who else? We also had Summit Credit Union. Just a bunch of folks that like sponsored us. Like I said, that those first 12 was all community powered. That was not really me. Wisconsin Mujer helps the company. The other part where I do consulting with the company, that's where I get paid. And Midwest Mujeres is completely crowdfunded actions, either through sponsorships that we find because they want to engage in the community. And podcasting, as you know, has just gotten such a big business. I mean, people are listening to them all the time. They want that community engagement. They want that information and so forth. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
You mind if we talk really quick about the podcast that you do? Where do you do it? How do you do it? Where do you post it? All that jazz?
We post it on Midwest Mujeres. That's Midwest and MUJERES.com. And you can go to our website, and all of our archives are there. And where we record, we have it's called Lady Laugh Studios.
It's called what?
Lady Laugh Studios.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, they're a little podcasting studio here in town.
Okay.
And they, engineered it pretty much and helped us record.
Gotcha.
Yay. Yeah.
Cool. So you have a real studio. I can't wait to get back into the real studio, and we can, I don't know, audio's so much better there. Plus, it's way more fun to be in person with someone. And I can, way more fun. I miss that. I so miss that.
That's what I was saying. I'm like, what's up with the Zoom? Where's the Zoom? Everybody's Zooming it.
Zoom. It's like looking at a piece of paper instead of looking at a movie. I thought I tried it the first couple of times when this whole COVID thing started, and it was, we'll call it less than ideal.
Oh, Jane. You should just have the webinar function, and then what I do with my Zooms, I do the webinar function, and then you can blast it right into Facebook. And then you have an instant audio.
No, I know how the technology works. It's just not, the feedback that I got is essentially on the video portion when we put this up on YouTube, no one's really watching it. They listen to it anyways. So essentially we're just dealing with bigger file sizes and people having to bat away their kids as they're talking to me on Zoom and stuff like that. The phone is just easier. When it comes to in-person, the plan is to get video fired up then, because then it's not split screen, it's super easy, it's authentic and all that jazz. But until the studio is willing to open, people are a little less afraid of germs, we'll just have to live with the phone.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if that works for you, I usually post it right into Facebook Stream and then stream it on. Or is it Facebook Premiere? There's also a way to do it that way.
I don't know.
Facebook Premiere allows you to face live it right away, and it looks like it's a new it's live.
Sure.
But everyone's to their own.
We don't have to worry about color at all, right? We don't have to worry about color, dress, studio, whatever. We don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It's just the voice and what we have to say.
True. Yes. Okay. Well, we'll talk later, James. Thank you so very, very much. Have an awesome afternoon.
Thank you. Let me see what we got going on. Araceli, this has been a crazy good conversation. I feel like you and I, in the end, we're both after the same thing, right? We just want the world to be a better place.
Yeah.
How we go about it just probably is a little different. Ain't no thing. This has been Authentic Business Program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphs and successes of business owners across the land, coming to you remotely through the Sun Prairie Community Studios, underwritten by Bank of Sun Prairie. If you're listening to this on the web, please like, subscribe, and share. My name is James Kademan, and Authentic Business Adventures is brought to you by Calls on Call, offering call answering and receptionist services for small businesses across the country on the web at callsoncall.com, as well as Draw In Customers Business Coaching, offering business coaching services for entrepreneurs in all stages of their business on the web at drawincustomers.com. And of course, the Bold Business Book, a book for the entrepreneur in all of us, available on Amazon and wherever fine books are sold. We'd like to thank you, our wonderful listeners, as well as our guest, Araceli Esparza, founder and owner of Midwest Mujer, an outreach marketing company. Araceli, thank you so much for being on the show. Can you tell me your website again?
www.wisconsinmujer.com.
Mujer. All right, awesome. Find us airing on 103.5 Wednesdays at 1 p.m., Sundays at 2 p.m., as well as at sunprairiemediacenter.com. Past episodes can be found morning, noon, and night at the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. Thank you for listening. We will see you next week. I want you to stay awesome. And if you do nothing else, enjoy your business.